Today I want to show you how we're going to be creating forms in clay using the slab technique with tar paper. This is an original construction paper model that I made for this form. Then, after using a construction paper model, tar paper was used. This is tar paper. Tar paper is roofing paper that goes underneath shingles on a building. It was used, cut out in the exact same shape as the construction paper, and then it was used to create the form in clay. And that's what I'm going to show you today. One thing that I just want to point out is I want you to notice the difference in size between the original construction paper form and the final glaze-fired form, because it shrinks about 14%. You will lose a lot of height. So as you are designing yours, if you are just trying to meet the minimum requirements, make sure that you add on probably another inch, inch and a quarter, just to make sure that you have enough in height. If you do a side-by-side comparison of the bisque-fired to the glaze-fired, you can see it's much closer in size, but still a little bit larger than the eventual glazed form. I will just move these to the side. And now what I want to do is I want to show you the process that we're going to go through with the tar paper and clay. Now for this project, for Ceramics 1, we are using stoneware clay, the same stoneware that we have used for a few other projects. It is our brown stoneware. This clay, as it comes straight out of the package, if it is brand new, you don't have to wedge it. You could actually roll it as it is because it's already been wedged. But here I'm combining a couple of pieces, so I want to wedge it together. So once your clay is wedged, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to roll slabs. Now, we are going to be using slab sticks to roll slabs. You basically have two choices that you could use. You could use either the yellow sticks or you could use the red sticks, depending on how thick you want your walls to be. If you're doing an average wall, say this is the form that I'm going to make today. I have a shallow texture that I did on this, so I did an average wall height using the red sticks. The only time anyone should ever use yellow is if you are planning on doing very deep, thick carving and you need to allow a little extra thickness so you don't carve through. But these walls, as you can see here, these were the 1/4 inch thick sticks that I used to create those. Now, we have created slabs in the past when we did our plate exercise, but what I'm going to show you now, just as a reminder, is when we roll slabs, you want to use the rolling pin, put the sticks on either side of the clay, and you roll from the center to the outside. Once you roll a little bit, you want to pick it up, you want to flip it, release it from the canvas. You can flip it, you can rotate it, but we need to change it up a little bit. I have a little bit of an air bubble right there. I think it probably just popped. Now I'm going to pick it up, release it from the canvas again. When you're rolling a larger slab, it takes a little bit more effort. You don't have to make giant slabs for this. You can use smaller slabs that are just the size. I'm going a little bit larger so I can get a few different of my pattern pieces cut out of one single slab. As it begins to get embedded into the canvas, you can see the canvas is getting quite wet. But as it embeds, it certainly gets harder to thin, so that's why you have to frequently pick it up and release it. I'm going to do it from both ends here. You know that you are down to the final thickness when you can hear the rolling pin on the slab sticks on both sides. And I believe I'm finally down to the correct thickness now. And lastly, I'm going to release that from the canvas. I'm going to set my slab sticks to the side for right now. There we go. Okay. Okay, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rib and I'm going to rib the surface of the clay. What I'm going to do is compress the clay particles. It does smooth the clay, but more importantly than smoothing it, is I am compressing the clay particles, and that compression is what will make a stronger slab. This is vitally important with a slab. You want to have strong walls, and you don't want to have cracking occurring. So this is very, very helpful. I'm going to flip the clay now, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to rib. If you occasionally come across an air bubble, like I just had an air bubble there, it's not a big deal. Just try to rib over it in the opposite direction to kind of hide it. Okay, now my slab has been ribbed. I'm going to release the clay one final time. By releasing it from the canvas, you're ensuring that it shouldn't get stuck when we go to cut out the tar paper patterns. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm taking a sponge with water on it, and I'm creating slip on the surface. The purpose of this slip is it is going to stick our tar paper to the clay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down our first piece. Then, I want to try to fit these in here as much as I possibly can. Let's see if I do this. Maybe, let's see. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I'll just get the base. Okay, so I can't fit more than 3, it looks like. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of gently press these down to make sure that they are in contact. Next, I'm going to use a needle tool. I'm going to take that needle tool and I'm going to let the needle tool just kind of ride against the edge of the tar paper. And I'm going to trim away the scraps. Okay, now once I've cut away, I'm going to take my scraps. Notice my scraps still have water on it, which is kind of handy because now I can just wedge those. They're going to be nice and moist. And now I'm going to lift up these pieces that have the tar paper stuck to it. I'm going to set it down on the tar paper side. So I'm going to lift up one edge. Remember, I had previously lifted this from the canvas. That's the reason this works. If you forget to pull it up off the canvas, you're going to have it stuck to the clay, and then it's going to stretch away from your canvas. Okay, there's 3. Now, it is possible. You can take these and you can stack them one on top of the other as long as you put tar paper to clay. You don't put clay to clay or else they're going to be stuck together. Now I'm going to take this scrap. I'm going to add a little bit more. And I'm going to wedge this up so I can cut out the other 2 pieces. Now, notice that my canvas is getting pretty wet here. If you find that your clay gets stuck, just move slightly to the right or the left and use a slightly drier area, or you could take a hair dryer and dry it off. As you are sponging your tables at the end of the bell, be particularly careful not to use too much water because you don't want it to be too awfully wet for the next group. Now I'm going to roll the next slab the same way that I rolled the first. I'm going to use the same red sticks on either side, rolling from the middle outward. And then I'm going to release it, rotate it, flip it, whatever it takes to get the right shape. Make sure you're releasing it from the canvas though. Okay, I have my last slab rolled out here, and I have ribbed it, and remember I have released it from the canvas. I'm wetting it down, and now I'm going to be putting the tar paper up on top. Cut it out with the needle tool. I'm going to hang on to these scraps because I'm going to use those to make some coils on the inside corners in a bit. And then gently release this from the canvas and lift. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this out as if it were my blown out explosion view, so you can see exactly what is happening here. Okay, and notice they all have tar paper on the back. So I have it laid out the same way that it's going to go together. The bottom in the middle, the sides are basically going to come up. Now what I want to do is I want to prep the corners for attachment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bevel on these corners. I'm going to cut about a 45-degree angle. I happen to have 4 sides, so if these are 90-degree corners, I cut the angle at a 45. And let me show you here. And this is what we're going to have. If you can see, the 2 beveled corners are going to fit together to create a 90. Okay? If you happen to have 6 sides or 3 sides, you might have slightly different than a 45. But if you have 4 sides, you'll have a 45-degree angle. What that will do is it will allow it to fit together and be on top of the base. Now I'm going to cut corners on all of these edges that are vertical, all of the upright corners. So as I cut this, I try to make sure that the corner of the knife is sticking out. I'm going to flip this around. I'm right-handed, so it's always easier for me to work on the left-hand side when I cut it. So as I take this away, you can see that I've got a 45, or approximately a 45. It certainly doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to do that over here. And I've got a few more sides to do. I'm going to do this one. Okay, and then please note, the tip of the knife, you can watch it, it sticks out as I cut, because I don't want to slice into the tar paper area. I just want to cut away some of the excess clay at the corner, so when I build it on top of the base, it will fit together nicely. So again, the vertical corners are what I'm going to bevel. I'm not beveling the bottom, nor am I beveling the base of the walls. And this is all on the construction poster that I've made for you all. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to prep these edges by scoring and slipping. So on the bevels, I'm going to score right on top of the bevel. Then I do a little bit to the inside of the bevel as well, a little bit on top. And then I'm going to do the bottom edges of the sides, because again, the sides are going to sit up on top of the base. And I'm going to just do a little bit on the inside corner too, because I am going to be putting coils there, and it's helpful if I have a little bit on the coiled part scored. Now, I will say this. Slabs are very temperamental. If you forget to score and slip, it could very easily come apart. You always want to make sure that you're doing these steps. When in doubt, score and slip. You can't score and slip too much for this. You can do too little, but you can't do too much. All right, so I'm just taking some water, or you could use vinegar for your slip, and I'm prepping all the scored areas, including the base. Okay, now I'm going to be building the sides on top of the base, but remember I have an arched bottom with this form. See, it's going to look like this. To create that arched bottom, I want to arch this, and I could take it, push it right on here, like so. Okay, that works. That's a nice way to do it. But then what I'm going to do is when I stand it back up, I need to have something to help support it. So I'm going to use a little bit of just waste clay to create like a little arch. Let's try this. And I'm just going to kind of hold this up. And yeah, that kind of looks like it'll fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this up, stand it up on here. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a connecting side and I'm going to put it up there. And I'm going to kind of push it in place. I'm going to take my fingertips and I'm going to push together the seam. Next, I'm going to do another side. Okay. And lastly, and this is where you can certainly use the help of a friend. In fact, I'm just going to push it all towards me so I can lean it up against me a little bit. And now this part, I'm going to hold this in place, squeeze together these corners. Once you get the corners squeezed together, it does certainly help hold it in place some. Now I can kind of push that to fit onto the base just the way that I need it to. And I'm pinching together the bevels on the outside. Again, you can certainly use a friend to help assist you to hold a wall in place as you get it into position. Okay, all right. Now, this is very temporary. What I need to do now is I need to make sure that I'm getting coils in all of these corners. So this is where I'm going to use some of my scrap clay. The coils do not have to be pretty. They could be quite ugly if you want. But I am going to roll out some quick coils. I'm going to do them probably about thicker than a pencil but thinner than my pinky. And I'm going to start off by laying these in here. And meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and roll some coils, and I'll come back after I have them. Okay, I'm back now. You can see that I have placed coils laying in each of the corners. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take either your finger as a tool, or you could take, say, a wooden tool or a rib. I'm going to hold together the corner on the outside as I blend that corner on the interior. You want to make sure that you are holding the corner on the outside, because if you're not holding it, you could really take the seam and kind of blow it apart. You could knock the wall apart. The purpose of this coil is it's going to add a tremendous amount of strength to this. And as you're doing it, you are really not only blending it, you are pushing it into that corner. You're making sure that it is well contacted in that corner. Remember, I had previously slipped and scored, and that corner was fairly wet with slip and ready to accept this. You always want to try to get your coils blended in on the very same day that you're assembling. It's much better to get it blended on the day that your clay is pretty soft and plastic. It will connect much better. For sure, you must blend the coils on the day that you put the coil in. You cannot apply a coil, set it in there, and then come back the following day. 24 hours is going to be entirely too long, and it won't be able to be blended. I'll get this last corner here. Okay, Now you can see that I have blended all of the coils. I used a wooden end of a knife like this. Once it is all blended, then you can go in there with a little rib and do a little bit more cleanup. You could go in there with your fingers, but you want to just try to do as much possible cleanup as you can while everything is still pretty plastic. So just by taking this rib, I can go through there and make the cleanup a little bit more complete. It's just going to make the cleanup when it's leather hard all the easier if you do a little bit more on this first day. Okay, now you can see on the inside I've cleaned up a little bit more. Those corners look a little bit better. Now I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to just blend these tops of the corners up here. You want to make sure that any coils up there are well blended, that there is no visible seam at any of those corners. Now what I want to do is I want to work on the outside of it. I'm going to turn this sideways and I'm going to remove this hunk of clay for the time being because I want you to see what I'm going to do here. I am going to rib each of these corners in toward each other. So the bottom of it, I'm going to rib like so. Okay. Now I'm going to rib this side over here. I'm using a piece of foam rubber to set this on so it doesn't damage anything. Okay, once you get the corners ribbed together, then you're ready to allow it to kind of sit and get leather hard. You always want to get it leather hard before you take the tar paper off. And what I would do tonight is I would just take a strip of bag and I would put it over the top because I want to protect the rim from getting a little bit too dry. Here's the little piece of plastic bag that I'm going to be placing over the rim to protect it as it dries so it won't get too dry and start cracking. And there we go. That would be day one on creating your firm slab pots with tar paper, and we'll let it dry and I'll show you what to do after it dries.